My name is Laurice Tate-Spandman. I'm the publisher of Johannesburg in Your Pocket City Guide. And we're in print and digital. And to be honest, Joburg is probably one of the most difficult cities to market. So we've chosen quite a task to be a guide to a difficult city. We're part of an international city guide series that developed in Eastern Europe more than 20 years ago. So, which actually gives us, I mean, that's quite a positive because In Your Pocket series has made a name for itself by covering the world's more difficult cities to cover. So we're happy to be in a tough city. 6 years ago, we started to connect with a vast network involved in tourism, and it allows us to see things from a very different perspective in the city. So I suppose we look at everything in terms of what are the city's attractions. And that's what also brought us to the question of festivals. And there's a wider sense of festivals, in a sense, should be part of our tourism attractions as well. But that's another issue we can come to later. And I'm not sure that's quite happened yet. So what we do is we help locals and visitors navigate the city and its attractions. Kenny's getting tired, so I'm going to be quick.
No.
Last year, we started a series of concierge neighborhood walks. And actually, these talks came out of those discussions with concierges who we've kept in touch with throughout the lockdown. And they started to ask questions about what's happening beyond the door, while most of the hotels have stayed closed. So what we do is really a philosophy of empowering people with information, and this is part of that. And we'll be moving from topic to topic as the questions arise. Today I'm joined by 4 exceptional panelists and a fifth. The fifth is Louise Whitworth, who I'll introduce first, who is our deputy editor, Johannesburg in Your Pocket. She'll be helping us manage the chat. So if you have any questions that you need to ask, please ask her. And then let me introduce you to, we have Rusira Sital, who is the artistic director of the National Arts Festival. We've got Osmic Manoa, who's the founder of Africa's biggest hip hop festival, Back to the City, which happens in Newtown. We've got DJ Ken Zero, Kenny Nzama, who is who does many things. Hard to put it to make it short, but he's here in his capacity as the organizer and the creative of the Obrigado Festival. And then we have Dawn Robertson, CEO of Constitution Hill, which is home to the Basha Uhuru Festival. And just a note on Basha Uhuru, last year this time, it was happening. What happened yesterday, 1 year ago. So a lot of questions, which I'm in no doubt that you have as well, because you've joined. And that for now, the way we once gathered has almost been outlawed. And festival organizers all have to rethink how you keep culture on the menu. And on the one hand, so many possibilities, and it seems quite positive possibilities. On the other hand, immense challenges, whether it's with technology, with financing, with access. So each of the speakers we've chosen today has a unique experience to share. And just to say it's a privilege to have them all gathered here. So we're going to start with Rusira, because the National Festival is on right now, the National Arts Festival, and it's on till July 5th, so you shouldn't miss it. And we'd like, Rusira, if you can share some of the challenges of taking this festival online, especially a festival that's been so tied to a geographical location, and to Makanda, Grahamstown. It's like, what has been the challenge? Like, how have you found that process of taking it to the next step?
Yeah. Thanks for having me on the panel. It's always great to be part of these things because it's really so much about what we're doing. We're figuring it out as we go. So it's really helpful to share and to listen. And it has been a challenge. It's been a broad range of challenges from the start. I think that's probably the biggest challenge, is that one is working these things out as you go. So invariably, having consistently being adaptable and being able to be responsive quite immediately has been key. Otherwise, we would never have been able to go through the various stages of from conceptualizing to learning how to work apart. We have our teams split up across Joburg, East London, PE, Cape Town, to deciding which applications, which tools, you know, how we're putting this together. All of that has been trial and error in a very short period of time. And now we have the festival running, and again, we're learning about how audience are using it, how people are interacting on the site, what devices they're using, and what. So it's I think we're my colleague actually in a evening meeting the other day said we're learning something new every 30 seconds, and I think it's totally true. So so yeah, it's been quite a journey.
Okay, I think we're going to move to Osmic. I mean, one of the things you mentioned, Rusira, was about learning as you go along, and Osmic is testament to this process of being able to adapt and invent on the fly. Osmic, tell us a bit about your process. Back to the City was supposed to happen in the flesh on 27th of April, and obviously we were deep into our lockdown. And I know you started, you had been streaming previously, but tell us a bit about that.
Yeah, I think what sort of had made it, I think, easier for us. I mean, we've been streaming for the last 4 years or so, the festival, but like our biggest numbers was probably like 300 people, and that was like people overseas, not even here. No one really cared about streaming. But what had happened was, the second week of lockdown, it was a situation where, you know, you're sitting at home. The first 7 days you're sitting at home, and everyone says we're gonna be exercising, you're gonna eat healthy, you're gonna change this. After 7 days, you realize that's not gonna happen because, you know, you start getting bored. You start, you know. So I said, look. Then it started actually as a challenge where on my Facebook page I started saying to people, I challenge everyone to let's learn a skill, and I'd start putting up Coursera links. That's, you know, start putting up Udemy links, and, you know, all these different things for people to study. And I said to myself, I mean, let me learn the skill of streaming, right? And it was not even about because at that time we thought, it's just another scare. In 30 days things will be back to normal. The festival will be happening. But then I started sort of learning more and more and more, and my take on it was very scientific, because my research started involving understanding how data works, understanding how cell phones work, understanding how cell phone towers work, understanding how people consume video versus consuming words versus consuming pictures online. And then from there on, started learning practically what is to stream, you know. And I think at that point, after I think about 200 hours, and the cool thing, what was cool about it is that I kept sort of informing people online. I kept saying, okay, I'm on 5 hours now, I'm on 10 hours, I'm on 20 hours, I'm on 50 hours, I'm on 100 hours, you know. And doing that was enabling everyone basically to jump in and become part of the process. So at 2 a.m. every day, I would start running tests. I mean, one of the funniest tests was Kenny was involved, where there was about 6 of us, and there was a conversation on Facebook, YouTube for 6 hours. We were just talking for 6 hours, and it ended up having about 2,000 people joining in and just watching us talking, and we're just talking the most random things. But what people didn't know when I was doing those things is I was testing to see at what point are people willing to tune in. Will they tune in 2 a.m.? Can they tune in the afternoon? Can they tune in the evening? What's a good time? How do they consume? Where are they coming from? And after I think all these learnings, after I had done about 500 hours worth of practice, that's when we did the festival, because by then we just realized that the festival is not going to be happening. And we had just signed a big deal with Hennessy, naming rights, which now the festival is called Hennessy Back to the City. And we had all these like amazing big plans. We had internationals. And the thing about it is that already we had paid quite a lot of money towards the festival. We bring a lot of things from China. We do some things in the States. Now all these things were stuck. Like wristbands of the festival are still somewhere, by the way. They still haven't arrived. You know, it's like $100 grand down the drain. literally 100,000 down the drain. No one knows where our package is. You know, so then I think the idea to say, well, the 27th is known as a hip hop day in the country or in the continent. Why don't we just take a risk? And at the time, there wasn't really anyone sort of doing all these live events at that point. And I said, look, I'm going to challenge myself and I'm going to do a 13-hour marathon. We're going to do 13 hours, exactly like how the festival is. Started from 2 o'clock, ended at 2 a.m. And it was very interesting because the minute we did it, then the interesting glitches started coming out, you know. That's when you start learning the hack. It was the funniest thing because we got a hack. There were about, so we had over 35,800 people watching, and our peak was around 8 o'clock with 16,500 people logged in watching. And then we got hacked by a Russian guy.
Your audience.
That got us to trend. It was hilarious. I'm not even going to say how we got hacked, but we got hacked. But the thing is, the numbers were there, and we did another one on the 1st of May on Workers' Day, which I think had about 13,000 people, which was so taking learnings from there. And then from there, we started just doing these, you know, shows. I've got a show with Kenny where he interviews all these American superstars. And once again, it's to test, to say, if we start speaking to Americans or Europeans, you know, can we get a wider audience? Who's willing to pay for this? Because I'll tell you now, not a lot of people are willing to pay for online content because they know very well that in the next week or 2 weeks, you're going to upload it on YouTube for free. So why pay the $50? So now it starts coming with the model around the feasibility of what
I'm going to stop you there because we're going to come back to that financial model. I want to move to Kenny because of also what you mentioned about activating the audience and testing how an audience responds to these online events. Often, I think, you know, I come from a newspaper background, and it was a hard lesson to learn from that very passive idea of people received the newspaper. There was no way to talk to the audience for so many years, and then you had this explosion online. Everybody wanted to talk back to you. In fact, they wanted to take over your job, which they did. So it's kind of, you know, that process. And Kenny, I know, has some very strong thoughts on what is that relationship with audience? How do you take them to a different level of experience? And how do you create value as the creative person? So, Kenny.
So I think, well, thank you for having me on this chat with so many important people. I feel like I'm important. And I think Osmic's 50 hours testament is showing in that he tried it and tested it, and he showed the world how he was doing it. But I think what us as creatives who are trying to have an output online, what we're struggling with is how do we communicate this to our audience as we're learning with them? Because the audience is now sitting there going, what's happening? Is this show for free? Is this guy a real DJ? Is this guy a real singer? Is this girl? Like everybody's is streaming from their bedrooms and kitchens, and everybody's a cook now. Everybody's pulling out their little consoles from home and they're DJing. People are bringing out their other passions. What that then do is it confuses us who are trying to onboard our skills and talents online, because Sipo, Thelma, and whoever is now DJing online, and now there's a share of a market that goes to necessarily people who are not unnecessarily people who are in the DJ world, same as people who are cooking, same as people who are doing whatever. So the audience is all over the place. And I think the big lesson for me was, how do you use an opportunity to have the audience you have at your hand and talk to them? Because a lot of the times, and I use the word talk to them, a lot of times it's not them talking back to you. It's me sitting at home showing you how to chop an onion or what song I'm mixing. But what's the marvel there? Why must I watch you chop an onion? You know, if you're not engaging me direct as an audience to even notice that I'm here. I noticed even now we have about 52 participants here. Obviously, we're going to get to them by way of taking their questions. outside of them extrapolating what we're saying. Because what I saw was I started getting bored watching DJs DJ for an hour because I'm sitting there. I could be reading a book or doing something, but now I'm watching you play songs for an hour. And it was now starting to appear to me that how do you make your show special for someone to engage with you and make them feel like they are part of this exchange? Because a lot of the times it's more about the subject subjecting you to their content and not even caring on how you're consuming it, and if you are consuming it or if you are receiving it. After my set is thank you, bye, close the laptop, walk away. So I think the most important thing for me was figuring out how do we make the audience a part of it, educate them, and make them a part of it. When I say educate, I mean, for example, the Obrigado Live Party that we do is a very like specialized event. So we took cues in what we do at the event. Because it's a Latin infused party, we encourage people to dress up in their Latin inspired whatever. We encourage people to do their own drink at home, like whether it's a caipirinha or whatever. We encourage people to not listen to the event on their phone because the quality of a phone was not built for a festival or a concert. Unfortunately, some people don't have an option for that, but we encourage people not to listen to the music on their phone. And four, we encourage people to send photos of them on how they, to us, and show us how they're enjoying the party. Sometimes they go on their live stories and literally show us how they're enjoying Obrigado. So they feel like they're part of it. The one way we could do it is go to Kai FM and start DJing and saying, hey, thank you, and walk away. But people start feeling to now become a part of it by people even show us outfits before we even start. This is my outfit for tomorrow. So I think that engagement with the audience for me was one big piece that was missing from a lot of creatives or festivals or concerts or even smaller concerts. And two was to now, I talked about people bringing out their consoles, DJ consoles, and start chopping onions. What they don't realize is they're going to then disturb the governance of how we entertain people online by making them pay for the service. Because everybody was on lockdown, started doing everything for free. Jump on the 10 tables, DJ, start cooking. And then a guy called Sipo says, well, I eat off this thing. If I do it for free, I'm not gonna get paid. How about I charge the audience? And the audience had gone through this month or two of free content. And then Kenny comes with this cleverness and say, I wanna charge you. And then the audience go, hey, guess what? We're gonna go to these other free guys and we're not gonna come watch and pay for your service because we don't care how you pay rent. So there was that misunderstanding of mass destruction of governance on, oh, okay, if you wanna see Ken Zero, you must pay, as you normally would have in the normal life. So there's so much free content that's disturbing the governance of us starting a new world of people paying for the services. You know, I don't know if I can go on and on, but I mean,
that's such a critical issue. We're going to come back to it. I'm going to move to Dawn now because, so I think it's interesting because we're like in a sequence of planning. And Dawn is at that stage of planning a festival into the near future. And Dawn, what is it like? What are your key considerations having kind of seen and been witness to what's been going on in this space? What's on your mind at the moment?
I think picking up on what people are saying, you know, with Basha Uhuru, like you say, it should be happening right now. And Kenny works on Basha Uhuru with me. He's the creative director. You know, we wanted to jump in head first and we would be doing what everybody else is doing, learning on the job. But we kind of decided to take a step back and to really think about what we were doing. Because for us, Basha is a little bit of a different type of festival. And it's also about, you know, the creative community is probably one of the hardest hit by COVID-19. And we really wanted to look at how do we reimagine Basha Uhuru to really support our creative community that we have on the hill. So we would have launched in June, you know, when we would have had the proper festival, but we stepped back and we're really looking at event experience design and learning from what people are doing. So I'm really looking at, you know, the National Arts Festival, what's happening there and what's working there. And we thought very carefully about when we should actually go with this once-off type of Basha Uhuru Festival. we've kind of settled on November now. And we've also settled on the notion of a hybrid event. So we figure by November, they'll allow more people onto the hill. And if you know the hill is very much, it's spread out. You can do different things with small numbers of people all over the place. So the notion is that we do a hybrid event with people there in person with a virtual online component. So like the others, we're really looking at the different types of technology. Kenny's done a lot of work around this, I think, but I think one of the things we want to ensure is that we find the right technology and we host a really professional event. The other thing that we've decided to do is that we will use the opportunity to build and support our creative community that is our Basho Huru audience. So a lot of creatives from different genres and disciplines are involved in different parts of the festival. So the idea is that we will run the festival over 4 months, with each month focusing on a different aspect. The first month, theatre and poetry, moving into film, moving into the music festival, possibly in October, and then doing the art and design component, the conference in November. So that's the thinking at the moment. And with each area, we're looking at different aspects. So for example, with the film festival, we're looking at actually setting up a driving on the hill and doing the film festival through a driving type event. And we're looking at, the other big thing is we're looking at collaboration. The whole idea, the whole notion is, yes, we've got our Basha brand and we don't want to dilute our brand and we want to still come out very strongly with our brand. And I'm saying this because Kenny is there and he kind of watches me when I do these things. But, by collaborating with other events, we could possibly create better opportunities for our creators. So we've taken the decision with our main sponsor, Nando's. And I'm not sure if you're aware that we were going to host the Laurie Awards on the hill. And so we're in conversation with the Lauries as well about how can we use their awards, their event, to actually create more opportunities for creatives. And so the festival will be a combination of performances, workshops, masterclasses, events. And particularly important for us is about how do we make it inclusive. So I think a lot of virtual events cut out different people. They're not really accessible. And I like what Kenny says about how do you actually get smarter about connecting with your audiences online. And specifically thinking about, it's easy to connect with your on-site audience, but how do you connect with your online audiences, and that's what we're doing now in the planning. We're really looking and exploring, and Kenny's kind of given a lot of things that he's doing with Bob Rigardo. We're looking at similar type of things so that you truly do engage the audience. And how do you encourage engagement and interaction? So if I can just allude to one of the aspects of what the Creative Festival would be like. So what we're doing on the hill is trying to create market access opportunities for the creatives that we work with, whether they are designer makers or food producers or whatever. And we're actually building a new Basho Huru website with an online shopping portal. And we're going to actually, over the next four months, be creating new products with creatives. And the idea is to do online Instagram live mentorship sessions where you pair up an emerging creative with an established creative, and they actually produce new products online and engage in that way. And ultimately people can bid for or to pre-order the stuff while it's being developed as you watch it, or it ultimately could be be sold online in the shop with all the proceeds going to the different creatives. So central to the whole philosophy, and I'm not saying that this is what Basho is going to look like in 2021, but central to 2020 is really putting the creative at the core of what we're doing, understanding what the challenges are that the creatives are experiencing and creating the opportunities for them. So I think where we are now is really about, creating our game plan, trying to figure out how we're going to do it, watching lots and lots of things. There have been live virtual events that I thought were going to blow my mind away, and I switched off after 5 minutes. So all of us are watching everything we can watch. But we're starting to figure out what it is that we're going to do. It's definitely going to be virtual. And maybe just to talk a little bit to the question that you've been raising around, how do you make it accessible? But how do you actually...
Sorry, Dawn, can we come back? I just want to, because there's so many issues that have been raised. I just want to see, is anyone in the audience, are there any questions at this point? I don't see anything in the Q&A. I know there's quite a bit happening in the chat, but if you want to ask any questions, please add them to the Q&A. It's just easier to manage. I wanted to go back to Risira because she's kind of in the frying pan at the moment of you know, in terms of timelines. And I suppose, I mean, there's so many issues that have been raised, everything from, you know, how people pay for culture. I was interested in also the idea of, have you taken your audience who would usually come with, have you got a new audience? Where did that new audience come from? It's like, it's also this idea of, I think once something goes online, you're also in this interesting space that we're finally able to be quite global in our thinking. But then it's much harder to actually know what does the audience want because it's so sort of disparate and fractured. So just, yeah, I'd love some thoughts on that, on what it's been like for the National Arts Festival.
I mean, when we started, it was a huge question around how do we, because the National Arts Festival is located in Makanda. It's fundamental to its identity and the town. So much of locals' employment and just, I suppose, the identity and the rhythm of the town is deeply entwined with the festival. So it was a big question around how, you know, what does this mean going online in relation to our locality and our identity as a festival and locality. I mean, I suppose also to say, and I'm not sure if it's known very much, we did actually produce work, and we did make those kind of facilities available. So we worked with theatres around the country. It was a long process, or rather a very careful and focused process to ensure that we are complying with safety regulations, and it's quite complicated. But so in the actual creation process and production process of work, we worked with technicians from around the country who we would have worked with anyway. Actually, they would have come to Makanda. So in that sense, we did manage to continue to work with some of the people who we have worked with before. And I mean, I raise this also because I think a lot of our audience is the arts community. You know, it's the arts sector, it's artists. And I think that's probably been maybe one of the more straightforward links, in that the art sector and the artists are interested in what we're doing, and they're involved in what we're doing. It's quite a huge, for something like over 200 productions. So they're incorporated in the festival. They are part of it. They are watching shows. They are engaging. In terms of other audience, it's interesting, and like you say, we're in the frying pan, so there's a lot, you know, it's a lot of making sense of things as we're seeing them now. And I mean, what we have found is we offer different pay gates options. So the what has taken up the most, in fact, most people who are coming onto the festival site have bought a festival pass. So it's like a one access payment place, and then you have access to all content on the festival for the duration of the festival. And then I suppose it's important to note that the festival, and this was another question, I mean, the festival usually exists from the 25th of June to the 5th of July, and we extended that to the 16th of July. So, you know, you go through all this work to kind of to put together a festival, and you're like, well, why you know, there's not students coming back into roads there, you know, we don't need to take down venues, or we can actually have this run longer. So that's been very interesting. There is the option to purchase individual tickets. There is the option to purchase day passes. So essentially we've got like a package of content for whatever day, and someone has like a single pay entry point, and then they have access to all of that content in that day. And having said that, that day is alive for the duration of the festival. So it's like you can get a mini festival, or you can buy the big festival. And I mean, I think it's something like almost 80% of our sales have been access to the entire festival. So, and I think that does say something about the way people are engaging with content. And also, now that the festival is alive in its online form, I see how I'm engaging with it, and I speak to people as well. it's interesting. It's a bit like, you know, trying to set up a performance at a traffic intersection, you know, and there's a lot of like of thought around, or, you know, I kind of go back to conversations around curating or presenting live art or public performance, because that's a bit what you're dealing with. You know, people are kind of, they're in the middle of a traffic intersection. They've got distractions left, right, and center. They're doing, you know, they're texting while they're watching a show, and I think having this setup where it's like a portal and you enter and then you can kind of live inside the space has actually been quite successful, much more than say, okay, I'm purchasing a show and committing to a show, because I think it's harder to do that online. Actually, people don't, they haven't lived like that online. They always do 200 things at the same time, so they're not going to change that now, which speaks a bit to what you were saying, Kenny. It's like the audience are like, what are we supposed to do? And they do what they've always done. I mean, people are not organized online. They have like 20 tabs open, and you know, so it's the same. So there's a lot of challenges and a lot to still learn. I also see, you know, based on everything that I've shared with you around how the setup is and how people are using the site, you also begin to see which works make more sense in this kind of context. You know, what formats, what durations. I think over 50% of our users are accessing it through a mobile phone, and we've got some really spectacular works like Mamela Yamza's work Pest Control, or Bushle's work Swan Song, where these are theatrical pieces that are staged, and you know, they were staged. There was a film crew, director, photography, lighting brought in, and they're really beautifully crafted. And I have to just kind of hold myself. So, oh, are you watching it on your cell phone? Goodness gracious! Can you just set it up to a proper screen? But then there's some works that are like, you know, 3 minutes long. They're snappy, and I watch it on my phone, and it makes more sense. So it's very complex. The range of platforms or ways to access.
It goes back to, yeah, what Kenny was saying is almost like you've got to educate, you know, this thing of you've got to educate the audience that this content needs to come with instruction, which I don't think I don't know. I mean,
we're writing the instructions. We're writing them as we're following them.
On the one hand, you have this idea that everybody can access everything. On the other hand, it becomes, again, more specialist of saying, you know, there's a very distinct set of instructions you need to follow to get the full benefit. Otherwise, again, you know, you're actually losing out on the value. But I wanted to chat to Osmic, and I see he's just busy. Oh, you're there. Osmic, I'm going to ask you to unmute. And I wanted to talk about like you raised it, this issue of like the financing of festivals and how you finance them. There's a sense of we might go back to a hybrid without doubt. You know, there will be space for that going forward. But I don't know if we're going to go back entirely to offline and online as two completely distinct things. And I'm wondering, like, where do you see, my concern is that sponsorship really takes away from creativity in the end. It's a great model to distribute content, but it's not a great model. It starts to limit what people are able to produce. And you've had a lot of experience in that sponsorship space. Yeah, if you can give us some insights into that.
Look, I think for me, I always say, man, there's always a positive to every bad, really, because like I say, is that when I started streaming the festival 4 years ago, by keeping in mind, I started actually streaming 14 years ago. I started actually streaming things 14 years ago. At the time, there was a company called Ustream. I think that was like one of the first to be doing it. And it was interesting because at that time, one would have never thought would ever be in an era where you have to be online, you have to live online, right? Even like I say, 4 years ago when we were showcasing all these, we tried to find sponsors to say, hey, you know, give us 500,000, you'll have the exclusive rights for the online show. And everyone was like, who cares about that? These are big brands, right? Now, fast forward to now, where now the big brands have to get involved with what is happening, because a lot of them can't activate, because we all know our arts and culture is all the liquor brands, unfortunately. So all these liquor brands have all these big budgets that they need to activate, but they can't activate them because either there's a ban or so forth and so on. So that now means there could be some monies that jump into the space. But I think the problem is because there's so few people doing it the right way, and there's so few people with the understanding of it and what the future of it looks like, we're going to be back to square zero, where now brands are going to be wanting to give us 20,000 Rand and 10,000 Rand, and not actually giving us the true value, because they'll be saying, well, the festival has 25,000 people that attend, and I can engage with them, and they can buy my alcohol, or they can buy my brand. But the minute your thing is online, how do I know that these people will go? And it's back to basically the TV model. You put your advert on TV, you do not know who these people are, where they're from, So I think the tricky part about the business model is we're going to be back now at where we're going to start having fights with brands yet again, Government does not really understand this stuff. I don't know if there's a lot of, except Dawn, but there's a lot of government, the thing I've found, because I've been doing quite a lot of government work and corporate work in terms of live broadcasting. And what I've just realized is that everyone has been talking about fourth industrial revolution. It's the buzzword. And literally 95% of the people don't know what they're talking about. That's exactly what they do not know what. So it's a buzzword where everyone is talking about we're in the fourth industrial, but people can't use a simple thing like Zoom, So what's happening now is everyone is forced, like you're forced to learn. And if you don't adapt to getting to understand these things, I mean, there was one government department from another province that called me, and they said, look, they've got all these millions, right? And they need to do online, all these different online activations, but unfortunately they'll be returning all that money because they've got no idea, and they can't even find people. It's another thing is, you would think you will find a lot of companies that can actually do this online things for you, until you realize, no, there's probably about 4, and those 4 already have so much work, which means I think now the opportunity is, if you really are looking for something where a paycheck will be coming in the future, this is the perfect time for you to learn digital marketing, to learn. The space is literally open now. And the beauty, once again, about it is that not many people can do it. If you can sit there and spend your 10,000 hours and master this thing, the work will flow your way.
I like that we're getting career advice. I might actually take you up on that.
The thing is, Laurie, I've proven it, because, like I say, I was playing. I was just messing about, learning a new skill, doing all these things. Next thing, a person says, I'm such and such from this big corporate company. We have been failing dismally. We see these things you're doing. We want exactly that. This is the budget. And I'm like, huh? Okay, I'm a company now. And I do that. Now it's so bad that I'm turning work away because there's so much work. And I try then to find other people I can give the work to. And then I realize that, wow, like we've been talking about fourth industrial revolution, but it's been talk and no action. No one actually knows what this thing means,
But I mean, you raised such an interesting point also about, at the start of digital culture, when it first really came to the fore, it was all about collaboration. It was all about adaptation. It was all about a kind of thinking agility. And then it seems to have just become corporatized. So everything about digital became corporate. Everything became around productivity. It kind of lost the creativity. And we haven't built those necessary skills.
I wouldn't say corporatized, because to tell you the truth, all these softwares are free. Like we did with Gauteng Film Commission, we did this master classes, and in one of them, the guys were talking about all these softwares that make games. So all these games that have made $2 billion in profit. All these movies, you find out that all these softwares that make all these Hollywood movies, they are free online. You can literally go onto the website, download the software, teach yourself. The class is free. And just like that, you're able to start now hustling all over the world, because once again, not a lot of people want to put the effort, because that's the thing I notice about, because now I'm also teaching myself that software now, because I'm looking at Iron Man. I'm like, how the hell did they make Iron Man? Then I research, oh, they're using the same software that these guys were talking about. Now I'm teaching myself how to use this software called Unreal Engine. And I'm like, oh, wow, this thing is free. Anyone can go online, learn this thing. But the only thing you have to give is your time.
I see we've got a question on that from Dion McDonald. She says, please define the online skills people are looking for that only a few people know about. So what would you give a sense of that?
Number one, like I said, I am turning away jobs that are worth like $1 million to 2 million rand away, because not a lot of people are streaming and are streaming properly. And when I say streaming, I'm not talking about getting on Zoom and then you stream Zoom. That I'm not talking about. That's not, to me, that's not in the stream. I'm talking about you need to figure out how to produce a whole TV show by yourself in the house with adverts playing, with all those sort of things. These are skills that literally are free that I've learned online. That's one. Two, graphic design has become actually a big thing, because right now, every single person is realizing that, oh, I can be a company. Everyone needs a logo. Everyone needs motion graphics. That's two. Three, the digital marketing space is huge. I mean, I don't know if everyone has noticed what's been happening in America, right? In America, every single person is all of a sudden an online marketing guru. Like all of a sudden, everyone can tell you how you can get your Facebook likes up and so forth and so on. There's a reason that's happening, because all these companies, because if you go onto companies, if you go into like an F&B Facebook page, you'll realize how they're still posting images, right? You'll realize some of these, if you go into a lot of the government websites, you get to realize how everyone is so far behind in terms of communication. So, and these are skills, once again, that are free online, that you can go online today, download the manual, or go onto YouTube. These videos are like 4 hours long. You just need to sit there and actually start learning these skills, because it's all time. And then and the funny thing is, when you keep learning it, and when you keep bringing it out to the world and saying, hey world, I now have just gotten a certificate doing 1, 2, 3, you'll realize that someone in your Facebook circle is probably a director in some company, and they've been looking for that skill. And you'll be shocked. That's just some of them.
I saw Kenny was nodding his head vigorously when we talked about adaptation and about collaboration. Do you want to share some thoughts on that and where you are in that process?
Yeah, but I wanted to go back to, I see Lizani was saying, making a suggestion that on our comments here, she said, people, the audience will come to you if you give things for free. I agree. I think you need, as individual brands and not necessarily festivals. So if you're a specialized event space like Obrigado, you have to look at your audience and think about, if I give stuff for free now, when I come back and say I'm charging, how will they react? If you're a festival, you need to think about, I need to give things for free because I have 20,000 people I catered to, and then reverse engineer that direct to the sponsors to pay for the experience and the audience you've amassed for them to engage with. So different brands for different ideas. Yeah, when I said people shouldn't consume some stuff on phones, I didn't mean that not everything, because some content is made for phones, some content is made for example, with Obrigado, we are lucky in one aspect in that we have the FM to help us channel our party. So we don't necessarily want you to have a party on the phone. So we channel that through FM. Streaming is the last thing on our sort of offering. But what we realize is that after this, what then? How will we make money off this thing? How will the company survive doing stuff on free on FM and online? So all the companies, all I'm saying is figure out before you get out and engage the audience, understand that when you do make that exchange with the audience, how will you then make some commerce out of it? Because after a while, if you, you know, brands like WeChat started wanting you to charge for downloading the app and whatnot, people are like, no, WhatsApp is giving it to us for free. So before you step out with your product, you need to understand the journey you're going to take with that audience, paying attention in mind with what the sponsors may want or see value in your offering. So all I'm saying is have the audience in mind and the sponsor in mind on how you can then re-engineer this thing and make money out of it. For all I care, this technology system or this post-industrial revolution will rejig itself. We'll find, humans will always find a way. So people are panicking, doing things here and there. I feel like with people like Osmic and the National Arts Festival, I see they're saying it's called VNAF now because it's virtual, but also understanding that for me, my first warning is people will not go back to normal anytime soon, even at level 1. People are going to use their own discretion and discerningness and say, do I want to go out to 1,000 festival or 500 people and go back and give this thing to my kids if we haven't found a vaccine? And that's if we know how long the vaccine takes to kind of have you recover. So I feel like after level 1, the audience is still going to think about it and say, why must I go into a room full of 50 people and take this thing back home? And another thing is we must show the audience the benefits of virtual experience. In that, if, for example, I co-own a bar called Artivist and Untitled Basement, tell me your journey of enjoying a show at my space. It's petrol going to the space, is Uber or you're driving. When you get there, you must pay for a ticket, which is generally 250, and then you must buy a drink, and maybe you're gonna buy a meal. You're spending 300 to 400 bucks at one go between 9 and 2 a.m. Where else, if I'm saying to you, here's 100 bucks, you're gonna watch the person that you like, maybe not in a physical form, but you're gonna watch the performance surrounded by your own family, in the warmth of your own house, and with less risk. And you're saving 400 out of 500. If we start communicating with the audience like that, then they'll see the value like, oh, you're right. If I go to Basha or Huru, I have to spend money on parking, on this, on driving. I'm stressed about everything else that I'm doing, being mugged or whatever at any of these festivals. So you're thinking, if I'm at home, you know, my boyfriend, my girlfriend, my husband won't say, you're always out. We say, okay, let's watch this artist I like in the comfort of our own home. So I think there's a lot of rejigging of education. We need to tell our audience to say, also,
I like that you thought it is even good for relationships. I just want to stop
very
you
good
there.
for relationships. Because my mom won't even use her credit card for anything. We need to say to people, you have to get over yourself. That credit card, you have to swipe or use. And we also need to build consumer journeys that are easy. So if I go on your site and I have to pay, give me 3 to 4 steps that I have to take to enjoy the show. Don't take me to the bank and the highway and heaven and back, and then I still can't watch the show. So I think mostly about audience and consumer journey. Those are the 2 most important things I think we should think about. Where else we normally think about, I'm going to do this great show, and then people go,
yeah,
but I can't access it.
All the effort goes into actually curating the show rather than everything that goes around having it. I wanted to ask Dawn, I want to move it slightly to tourism and audience, and because really, Dawn, you've been a kind of pioneer in terms of bringing Afropunk to South Africa. It really was the first festival that's opened up our minds to, we could be attracting foreign audiences with the culture that we have here, instead of only playing to locals. Dawn, I'm going to ask you to unmute and share some of that with us, but also, like, what do you think the potential is for South African culture to be on a more global stage?
I think as I was listening to Kenny, and I have to say I agree with him to a large extent, but that's exactly what was going through my head. Because, from a tourism perspective, events are one of the key drivers of visitors to our destination. And how do we kind of use these virtual or hybrid events and still get people to engage with the destination and still explore the destination? I mean, I know that Afropunk, for example, is contemplating in October a global Afropunk festival, which will be completely virtual. They haven't given up the idea that we will be at the point where we can actually host Afropunk at Conneaut on New Year, you know, so we're all kind of holding thumbs that that will happen. But, you know, I wondered to what extent, you know, and it'd be interesting to hear, for example, from the National Arts Festival, to what extent have you been able to get your message out beyond your normal audiences because you are virtual? And that's one of the things that we're thinking about with Basho Uhuru, you know. Basho Uhuru has always been pretty much a localized Gauteng-based festival. We do get a couple of people coming in from Northwest and the closer provinces and stuff, but we're really looking with this new festival, one, to kind of get audiences from around the country and also get audiences from other parts of Africa. But also, how do we then engage experts? Because we're doing a lot of this mentorship and masterclass type program, how do we bring in global experts that could actually work with the communities that we're working with as well? So I think
yeah, sorry, can we go back to, I would love Sarah to answer that because I can see we're running a bit out of time in terms of the audience that has been attracted to the National Arts Festival.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are seeing international audience, which is really exciting. I think we're kind of the last few days looking at, I think we had about 13% of audience yesterday, and it's growing. So we'll see how things are looking as we get into next week. But and because we do workshops and webinars as well, and there's the Jazz Fest and the performance and music, so there's a whole range of things, as there usually is with the National Arts Festival. But I've stepped into a handful of the webinars or the workshops, and so there's international, there's local and international participants and panel members and artists, and so there's also audience, and that's really interesting. I think especially some of the workshops are quite focused, like on learning how to work with green screens and for example, and so you have a very committed, very specific group of audience that are from different parts of the world, and it's kind of a bit of a surprise when you get into the Zoom room. So I think there's a lot of potential there and a lot of possibility in terms of audience. I had a conversation with a friend who is based in Nairobi a few weeks ago, and he works in theater and he does a lot of education work, and he was saying, oh, he's very excited, he's going to kind of set up like audience viewing rooms and have the possibility to, with a group of audience, so his kind of students and colleagues, to watch work and they would exchange. And so there's definitely a lot that's possible there. Yeah.
You see, Larissa, for me, that's where the opportunity for tourism lies. So if you can hook people into the stories and the content that we have here, and the virtual platform just allows you to tell those stories, to create that content, to package that content. And how then do you use that to draw in tourists and international tourists to want to physically come and so that's the part I would like to explore a lot more.
Can I say one thing?
Having a much more supportive framework for that, because I think what's interesting is that we're at a point where it's like the ordinary people are charting the course forward for where the country actually has to go in terms of culture, in terms of tourism, in terms of, and there's like a whole backup that needs to take place to push that to the next level in a way. And I'm wondering, it's interesting, Osmic raised this idea of, so much talk about the fourth industrial revolution, but where the skills to back it up, where's so that's, talk a bit about.
I've got something to add on that I just actually sort of got me thinking now. The perfect example, actually, because we always need a case study, right? Because a case study will always tell us what the past looked like and what the present of that time was and what the future of it was. And the perfect, I think, case study for everyone to look at is the music industry, right? Because the music industry at some point, vinyls were the thing, right? And then cassette tapes were the thing. And then CDs were the thing. But you must realize that in all these different eras, right? They kept saying that the music industry is coming to an end. Artists are starving. When Napster first came out with bootlegging CDs, everyone thought the world is going to end. Music is not going to exist. Artists are going to starve. But let's be honest, right now, artists are making way more money than before. And why? It's because it has nothing to do with sales. No one is making money from these sales, because if you go online on these streaming platforms online, you don't make much money for your music being paid, but you make a lot of money from brand endorsements, from showing up on TV commercials. Meaning the music industry had to adapt to that situation. And I think that's where we are right now, is that those that are willing to learn new skills and adapt, and those that are willing to research history so that they can better their future, those are the people that be winning. And unfortunately, what that means, it means it's survival of the fittest. That's just realistically where we are. And a lot of people, every time I say it, they're like, no, but shouldn't look at it that way. And I'm like, the problem sometimes is that we sugarcoat things. The fact is, if you don't have a skill that you can do in the comfort of your home at this present time, you are in big trouble. Because let's look at our country right now, what's happening in terms of retrenchment. You know, EdCon just, let go 22,000 people. Government is about to let go so many people. SA is going to let, and more companies, because remember, once this is all done, we've got another problem. It's called a financial meltdown, because there's no money. Companies don't have money to spend. Government does not have money to spend. Now we're going into a recession. You look at the dollar exchange, and these are the low things that I always feel that a person has to teach themselves. You need to understand what does money exchange mean? How does it affect you? Because at some point in time, when you don't learn these new buzzwords, but if you don't understand, pandemic, epidemic, if you don't learn all these things, you're literally gonna get caught with your pants down. So I think we are in that age now where we should stop talking about the fourth industrial revolution and do it and be part of it, and actually get online and then learn all these things. Like I say, they're all free. A lot of these things that I found that they're all free, or they'll be like $5, or be like $10. So yeah, I think education.
That's our age. Yeah, we're living in the most exciting on the one hand, and then the most frightening age at the same time. I'm very mindful of time. It is 4:00. I feel like we've only skimmed the surface, and there's so many issues. I think maybe I'll just give each person an opportunity to have a sort of closing remark. I'd love to carry on, but I don't know if we can do that, because I know Kenny has to go. And I think this is the kind of conversation that could go to a 16-hour live streaming if we could. So I think let's start with Kenny for a closing remark, because I know you've got to go soon.
Yeah. So I think in closing, I like that Lizania and I have been engaging on the side. I don't know if you guys are seeing. She brought up a very important point when I brought up if you go to a festival, the stress of parking, and she said, what about connectivity? I think that was a very interesting question and important, because I feel like it's a world we were forced to go into, so we will improve. Unfortunately, people who don't have great coverage will probably feel the pain. And she made another good point by saying physical events will never be replaced by virtual. I absolutely agree. For the next 3-4 years, that's what's going to happen. So companies have to survive, find a way to pivot and engage their customers virtually. What it also does is it increases your audience to the rest of the world. So, while we're thinking about our physical events, let's embrace and indulge in these virtual events where we can now with our audience. So if Osmik did streaming 14 years ago, now people get what he was trying to do. So he can have 20,000 people on a physical level back to the city, and another 20 all over the world. So that's going to be a blissful world if you know it, how to rejig it right now. So yeah, those are my words. But I'm saying educate the audience as well as much as you're educating yourself on how to consume your product.
Great, thank you. Dawn, your closing remarks?
I think for a long time, Larisse, we've been trying to push the notion of sustainable eventing. You know, we do a lot of conferencing type activity as well. And we've always tried to look at how you offset carbon footprints, how you kind of engage. I think this has forced people into the virtual world. But for me, I think where we're going to land up is in that hybrid space around create, because, you know, a lot of people on the chat group are talking about that physical vibe. You need to have that vibe. We want that. We need that. So it's about how do you create that, but how do you expand that into the virtual realm? How do you capture that content so that you can actually use that content? And somebody raised a question about sponsorship. I think a lot of sponsors, particularly around the kind of work we do, Kenny, with Basho, Huru, and even what Afropunk is doing, we engage a particular audience that brands are trying to reach. So how do we leverage these events that we're doing to actually capture those stories, to tell those stories, to capture that content and use that as our leverage to bring on board sponsors? And, you know, one of the big things we're trying to do with Basho Huru this year is to look at how we actually provide data to key people that we want to involve. So we're really going to have a hybrid model of free eventing, when people pay for, and people that we've selected through a process we're going to go through over the 4 months, which we really want to nurture and grow, who will actually create, you know, give access to data to, so that they can be part of the program. So I really think it's about being dynamic, and it's really about just learning as you go, you know, changing the engine as you fly the plane, and we'll get there. But I think, you know, that's what's going to make us so unique and special in what we do.
Osmic, a last thought, especially, so I suppose there are a lot of people on this talk who are, a lot of the attendees are festival organizers and involved in that space. What would be your key piece of advice going forward?
I think, to me, man, it's not even really about festivals. To me, it's actually about understanding the era that we live in. That's the first thing. And also realizing what your future looks like, because like I said, 90% of these skills that you should be using for the future, right now, they're very scarce. And the funny thing, once again, that people have just not realized is that the world just got smaller. The world literally just got smaller, because now you've got the biggest artist in the world. You literally are now looking at him in bed, making a comment, and he's live there. And literally, he's got nothing to do. And that's how we've been getting all these big American artists, because they're also sitting at home with nothing to do. So you can literally reach out to all these people. And the same thing applies to even all these different sponsors, so forth and so on. So I think it's time for people to understand the world just got smaller. The skills that are needed for the future are very, very little, right? And what does that mean? That means the industry has just opened up. That's what it means. The industry has opened up. Go out, get these skills, and I assure you that the work will come. And same applies. I mean, if you're doing a festival, you need to start thinking around, what else can I do? Yeah, maybe the people won't pay to look at your online festival, but maybe you can sell them caps and T-shirts. Maybe you can sell them, I don't know, an experience of sort, you know? So there's a lot of things now that you can start doing within that festival space to engage people. It does not have to just be a DJ playing on a screen. Like Kenny was saying, is that, you know, you're seeing a DJ playing for an hour, and then when you go into another page of another DJ, he's playing the very same music for another hour. By then you bored, you know? So you need to start thinking, what else is there? How do you take it to the next? How do you, what else, who else can you collaborate with? Maybe there's a young local designer willing to partner with you to make customized sneakers. Maybe you're not selling a festival, maybe you're actually selling customized caps. Maybe when a person buys a cap, you get access into my festival, you know?
I like that. I also like the fact that it's a very positive message to end off on. And I want to just give Rusira, who's really, as I say, in the middle of her festival, an opportunity to give us a sense of what's ahead for the next few days, and what are your kind of biggest considerations as the festival continues.
What's ahead for the next few days? I mean, each day that goes past, we release more content. So there's just a greater mix, and we invariably have more people, and there's definitely a buzz in terms of people speaking on social media, giving their feedback, what they think works, what doesn't, their thoughts, and that's really interesting and really exciting. I would like to actually leave this panel with a bit of a provocation. So something that I've been thinking is, you know, when we speak about, we kind of, without being aware of it, we talk about the experience and the user journey and what we keep referring to, but I don't feel like we're totally acknowledging, is that we're moving away from talking about products, about an endpoint, about a thing that is stands still and you purchase. We're talking about living in online spaces, about experiences with people. We have shifted, and in a way we maybe not totally acknowledging that we are shifting. And I think there's something there that needs to be considered. And I mean, in the festival, it did take a lot to speak to our stakeholders and our sponsors to try to convey to them what we're doing while we're busy figuring it out. And I think it's also linked to that we're not saying this is the product, you know, here it is, come here, and here's the ticket. No, it's something very different. So there's something to be built or to be figured out there. And there was a workshop. I want to share one last thing. There's a workshop that was comic book writers and publishers and artists from the continent, and there was a Jide Martin, who's a Nigerian publisher, and so you know, for the hour there was a lot of complaints about people not buying comic books, and you know, and the business side of things. And he was saying, and he just kind of dropped a little diamond. He said, so comic books generate popularity, and I think this is a bit what Cosmic is saying. He says, you know, your characters become popular and they gain, you know, you as intellectual property, you've got equity there. You're not selling books. What you're doing is you're constructing entire characters. And when you bring this into an online space, you really have a whole nother possibility to live. So the National Arts Festival, for example, has a lot of work online, but we also now have a presence. We are a thing online, and we can do other things, or, you know, little, small. So there's big shifts that are happening here in terms of how we, so event organizers and people involved in tourism, are perceiving ourselves and what we're capable. We're talking about, like, okay, we need to get brands. We are brands, you know. So there's some mental shifts as well that have to happen internally, I think, for us.
I agree. I think that's such a valuable point, and thank you for raising it. I think that's quite vital, that we actually, you know, I suppose we get a little bit lost in this whole process of trying to ask so many questions, but actually not even noticing the process we're going through. And I think we really are in a space of, as I say, going back to, it could be the most exciting thing that ever happened to us. It's also very frightening, but it has both of those elements, and the ability to play and experiment and to try new things and to fail if we need to and try again and find the ways that will, because I think at the end, it's all about exactly the values of what this pandemic has taught us, that if you take all the people away from us, we feel it. So how do you bring that level of connection back and that level of engagement on every level, digitally, physically? That's what's become most important to everybody. It's like, how do I be with people in the world? So it's interesting that that's the cultural space we're in. But I'm going to end off on that. I want to say thank you to all the panelists. Thank you so much. As I say, I think there's so many doors and windows that are opened through this discussion that I think could be explored much further. Yeah, and thank you for coming, and thank you to everybody who attended. And we will put a video out of the session. It will be free. Don't tell Kenny. And it'll be on our YouTube channel. And as I say, thank you again, guys.
Thank you so much, Larisse. It was very useful. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you.